Hi guys, welcome back. So in this tutorial, I'll touch base on how we can use delegates effectively. And this understanding is very important because this gives us better ways of using them more practically. So to understand how delegates can be used effectively, just maybe think of um, two developers working sort of independently, right? Uh, first developer has created a framework which then other developers or other developer is leveraging, right? So just as an example, and by the way, all the code that I have mentioned in this tutorial, I have uploaded that onto my GitHub, and I will provide the link in the description below. So let's say this class was developed by the framework developer, and now other developers would leverage that, right? So I have coded this in the final version, but I would maybe comment out some of the sections to explain better. So this is the class. These are all the fields, sorry, properties, right? Um, and in here, if you see, we just in this method we promoting the developers if um, they are worthy of a promotion. So as an example, this would be something like, just as an example, like developer, like let's say if the experience is like, let's say, greater than 10 years, we would like to uh, promote that developer, right? So you have a developer class. Inside that developer class you have static method, which means you can invoke that on the class itself, not on the object. And then let's say now I have hard coded that, right? Which means if the developer has more than 10 years of experience, you can simply promote that. That's just like a um, like a very simple method that I've written. Now this is something the framework developer has chosen. Like, but think about it. What if the person using this class has some different criteria for promoting the developer? So what I mean to say is we currently this is hard coded, and we would like to maybe dynamically replace this. So uh, as we discussed in the previous tutorial, that delegates are pointers to method, and methods essentially is nothing but a piece of code, which essentially means that using delegates we can dynamically pass code, right? So if I can sort of replace this, right, with something like this, where there is this method, right, um, or or I should call like the delegate, and then this would come from the other developer, right? Not the This would come up from the other developer. So um, let me try to explain it in a better way. So so what I've done is created the delegate, and that's just taking a developer and returning me a boolean. Why boolean? This is another important part where I want to touch base. So for example, let's say, as I mentioned, this was the code, right? Let's say this thing did not exist at all, and that's how your developer class looks like. Now in order to make it dynamic, um, the framework developer has to think on few things. One is which part of the code I want to make dynamic, and then he would come to the conclusion, okay, that's this one, right? I'm getting an error because I've passed this, which um, like for example, right? So yeah, the first thing, developer needs to find out which part of the code he wants to make dynamic, which is this one. Then the next thing he would like to think on is the part of the code that I'm making dynamic. What should be the input parameters to that piece of code, and what should be the return type, right? So if I jot down that those points, this is the piece of code I want to modify. The parameters passing in here should be a developer object. Now, generally, if I am, if like let's say in this if condition, the experience is used, the experience property of a developer is used. To be honest, if I'm writing a method, then uh, I'll I'll pass in the whole developer. So um, the input parameters become the developer, and the output should be a boolean. That's how we have created this delegate, thinking about like all these 3 points essentially, uh, where the part of the code which needs to be changed dynamically, what should be the input parameters, and what should be the output, returned output, right? So if I want to change that, right, um, then what I'll do is I have created this delegate, right? Um, and to this delegate, we will attach a method. And who will do that? That's the other developer, right? So let me comment out. And then we passing that delegate as a parameter to this method, right? And then this, what are we doing here is we calling that. What mistake am I doing? All right, I found out what was the issue. This bracket, right? So that's this part. So in essence, this would be the piece of code the framework developer would write, and this is then consumed on the front end, something like this. So what I've done is, um, I've created a list of developers, right? And then I've instantiated two developers in that list, and I've added them. So if you now see, these are different values of the property that I've provided, and then this is the method. Now, there's one interesting. There are a few couple of interesting points which I'd like to highlight. One is if you see the method, the actual business logic for the method that's actually provided by the developer that would develop the application after the framework's being developed, right? So if you see the business logic for the promotion is if the developer has more than 10 years of experience, and then in the same developer has done what he has done is to that is promote delegate, which is this one. He has attached the he has attached this promote method, right? So now this is pointing to this method. And then once the array has been uh, set up, then because then using the developer class, we have called the promote developer, and now we we do not need any instance of developer class because this promote developer is a static class, sorry, static method, right? And then I've passed the list because the list of the developers and is promotable, right? Is promotable is an instance of this delegate which is now pointing to this promote method. So then this gets invoked, right? And now since this is promotable is pointing to promote, once this gets called, is promote, which is once this is passed, the variable name is shall promote. Shall promote, which in essence means shall promote is now pointing to promote, and then this piece of code is executed, which simply means um, this is called, right? So as you can see, like this has been delegated. So the framework developer has delegated responsibility of providing the logic or the business logic to the other developer. Now, for example, that's the list of developers, two developers, the experience. So for myself, I've only written 3 years of experience, and for John Adam, I've given like 13 years of experience. So if I run this code, let me change the startup project. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, only Adam is promoted. What if I now, because of this convenience that we have, what I can essentially do is come here and maybe modify this method, right? And uh, maybe write something like developer dot, let's say greater than 2, and developer dot salary is greater than 90. This means that both these developers shall now be promoted. If I run this, as you can see, both of them are promoted. So essentially, it's very easy to change the business logic from this part of the code, whereas in here, we're just dynamically passing the business logic. So this is very important use case of using delegates. So in nutshell, what we have discussed, I'll just give a small summary of it, brief summary of it. First thing, the delegates are very useful for framework developers. Next, it is used to dynamically pass the code, right? And then the framework developer has to find out which piece of code he is replacing dynamically. Once he has identified, okay, this is a piece of code we are developing, or we would be replacing dynamically, then he has to figure out what should be the input parameters and what should be returned, right? Once that's done, based on that, he would write a delegate and then essentially pass that as a parameter, right? As a parameter. And once that's done on the front end, the guy utilizing that would write a method conforming to the definition of the delegate. And then to that delegate, he would, um, to the instance of that delegate, he would point to that method, and yeah, he could then simply use it. So that's in a nutshell how generally delegates are used extensively. That's it for this tutorial.